Okay, I want you to just take a moment and think about that internal voice. It's not usually loud, is it?
No, not at all.
It doesn't sound like, the government or your boss or even your partner complaining. It's quieter.
It's more like a nagging pressure, almost a background hum.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
speaks in those moments of hesitation or when you're being self-critical, or sometimes it's just this little wave of shame. Like when you think about doing something
Yeah.
totally wild, something raw, unmanaged.
Yes. It feels ancient, that pressure. And it operates completely separate from any external authority. You don't need a boss looming over you or the threat of jail.
Right? No physical punishment needed.
None. And yet, you police yourself. We police ourselves with this incredible rigor. Honestly, any real-world tyrant would be envious of its effectiveness.
It's like the ultimate invisible rulebook, isn't it?
Mhm.
And where that comes from, that's what we're really getting into today. This is our deep dive. We're exploring the source of that quiet governor inside, asking that really core Freudian question. Who is the jailer?
And I guess, why did we build this prison for ourselves in the first place, psychologically speaking?
Well, to even start answering that, we have to be clear. The God we're discussing here, it's not theological, not in the usual sense.
Okay. So not a divine being.
No, it's purely psychological. It's a mechanism, really, a complex one for control, a structure that lives inside your mind. Freud gave it a name, of course, the superego.
The superego?
Think of it like the ultimate internalized authority. It's like the father you never consciously picked, but whose ghost you still kind of worship long after any actual father figure is gone or silent.
That's fascinating, because it completely shifts how we think about morality, doesn't it? We're not searching for some divine commandment etched in stone. We're looking for a psychological mechanism. But okay, where does this internal police officer, this authority actually come from? You mentioned our sources trace it back to something pretty radical, almost mythological. Precisely. And it's probably best to think of it as a kind of founding myth, the necessary fiction perhaps, that helps explain this phenomenon of mass psychic guilt. Not literal history, but psychologically true.
Okay.
Freud's really radical idea about where morality and even religion started. It's the story of the primal horde.
The primal horde. Okay, unpack that a little for us.
Yeah.
What does this mythical crime involve?
Right, so imagine way back an ancient group, a band of brothers maybe, and they're completely dominated by one all-powerful, tyrannical father figure.
Okay, got it. The big boss.
The biggest. He controls everything, the food, the land, access to the women. He tolerates zero rivals. Now, in this narrative, the sons, who are resentful and want what he has, they band together.
Oh.
They collectively rise up, they murder the father, and then this is the really disturbing part. In a kind of ritual act of victory, but also shared crime, they consume him.
Whoa. Okay, that is incredibly violent. And basically the opposite of every moral code we live by now.
Exactly. And that's the whole point. The immediate result wasn't this feeling of, great, we're free. Not at all. It was this profound psychic guilt and intense fear.
Fear of what? He's gone.
Fear of his ghost, maybe, but more profoundly, fear of the vacuum.
Yeah.
They realized, maybe unconsciously, that by destroying the father, they destroyed the very structure that held their world together, however brutal it was. They were haunted by the rupture, by the act itself, and maybe also by the fear that the aggression they used against him would now turn inward against each other.
Ah, okay. So the guilt wasn't about breaking a law, because there wasn't one yet. It was existential. They almost missed his judgment, because even though he was terrifying, he defined their reality.
That is the core insight, yes. So in their fear and their guilt, they did the only thing they could, really, to survive psychologically. They brought him back.
Brought him back.
As a symbol. The totem pole, the sacred animal, the idol. The first god, you could say. They swore loyalty to the symbol of the father, and crucially, they created the very first moral law, the original "thou shalt not kill," forbidding the exact thing they had just done.
Wow.
So the first moral structure, maybe the first religion, it wasn't handed down from heaven. It was born purely as a way to manage this overwhelming collective psychic guilt, a psychological necessity.
Okay, so if that's the origin story, the myth,
Yeah.
wait, here's where we connect it to you, listening right now. The Freudian argument is that we haven't escaped this ancient deal. Not at all. We've just internalized it so completely, so deeply, that we forget the transaction even happened. That tyrannical father figure didn't just vanish. He moved in.
Right.
right into our heads.
He became your superego, that nagging voice, that sense of obligation or shame. It isn't some innate moral compass, not according to this view. It's the echo of every authority figure, parents, teachers, cultural norms, everyone who ever told you no.
So it whispers things like,
You're selfish, or you're lazy, you're just not good enough, you don't really deserve pleasure, do you? Every single time you hesitate or feel that flush of shame, that's the superego doing its job, policing its territory inside you. That original first no belonged to the primal father, and basically every societal rule since then has just reinforced that original programming.
and we see this internal government in action constantly, don't we? Like when you feel that really crippling shame about having a perfectly natural desire, could be sexual, could be creative, could even be a desire for, power or recognition.
That's the superego enforcing the old taboos.
Yes, or when you feel you have to apologize just for existing, for taking up space. Or maybe when you push yourself to work until you collapse, trying to prove your basic worth instead of just allowing yourself to rest.
That's the god of the superego demanding sacrifice. It's constant surveillance, but it's internal. It cleverly turns what might have been external oppression into a self-imposed guilt. You become convinced that your deepest, most natural impulses are somehow dangerous or wrong.
And we keep this internal authority figure alive. Why? Because we're scared.
Because you're terrified, fundamentally, of the chaos. The psychological, dissolution, maybe, that you fear would happen if you finally let that internal father figure die.
Which brings us neatly to the next big piece.
Yeah.
The actual price we pay for living in, quote-unquote, civilization.
Yeah.
It's not just about managing this superego, is it? Culture seems to want to manage our most basic biological drive.
Oh, absolutely. That's perhaps the great, elegant deception of culture. We're fundamentally driven by these two massive forces, right? There's Eros, the life drive. That's the urge for connection, for merging, creation, sex, bonding.
Life connection, got it.
And then there's Thanatos, the death drive, which sounds grim, but it's also the urge towards breaking things down, aggression, returning to an inorganic state, even rest, dissolution.
Stillness.
Eros and Thanatos. Life and death drives.
And culture. Culture is frankly terrified of both of these in their raw, untamed forms. Why? Because they dissolve boundaries, they shatter hierarchies, they're unpredictable. So you can't just get rid of them.
You can't eradicate them. No, they're fundamental. So what do? You redirect them. You channel them. You ask us, no, you compel us to sublimate.
Sublimate.
Right.
Channeling the unacceptable into the acceptable.
Exactly. Sublimation is taking those impulses, the ones that society deems unacceptable, or that just create too much anxiety, and redirecting them into activities that are seen as productive, socially acceptable, maybe even rewarded. It's how culture makes us manageable, necessary even for the social order.
Okay, give us a really clear example. How does Eros, that kind of wild, connective, sexual energy, how does that get put in a cage today?
Well, look at marriage, or maybe the traditional nuclear family unit. Now, on the surface, we talk about love, commitment, companionship, all valid. But from this psychoanalytic perspective, it functions as the primary cultural cage for Eros. It takes that wild, raw, unpredictable desire, and it locks it into a state-sanctioned, often economically productive, child-generating unit. Culture essentially says, okay, you can have desire, but only here, only in this way, only with this person, within this contract.
And what happens if that desire, naturally wants to leak out? If you find yourself longing for something or someone outside that prescribed cage?
Instantly, the superego flares up, the internal alarm bells ring. You're being unfaithful. You're betraying the rules. You must be a bad person. We immediately pathologize that natural, flowing longing. We start calling our own aliveness a problem that needs fixing, maybe through therapy, maybe just through more rigid self-control.
Instead of recognizing it as just energy.
Right.
A drive that civilization demanded we contain.
Precisely. A drive that had to be constrained for the sake of social stability, as culture defines it.
Okay, that's Eros. But what about the other one? Thanatos, the death drive. How does culture manage aggression, or that urge to dominate, or even just the simple desire for everything to stop, for rest, for destruction? How do you make that acceptable and modern? Where does the death drive put on a blazer and tie?
Work. Without a doubt, work. Modern work culture is civilization's absolute masterpiece when it comes to sublimating Thanatos.
Really? Work?
Think about it. That raw urge to dominate, to tear down boundaries, to exert force, to be aggressive, it gets entirely redirected into productivity. You don't get to, physically smash your competitor's setup.
Right. Probably shouldn't do that.
But you do get to smash quarterly goals. You channel Thanatos into hitting key performance indicators, into writing aggressively competitive emails, into the sheer intense self-discipline needed to crush it in the marketplace.
Hold on. Are you seriously suggesting that my drive to achieve professional success maybe break a sales record?
Yeah.
That that's just my primal aggression wearing a suit?
I am suggesting that civilization has brilliantly, successfully channeled your innate aggressive energies which, if left untamed, could destabilize the whole social structure into an economic drive, a drive that ultimately benefits the collective order, or at least the existing hierarchy. And what's the trade-off? You trade your raw vitality, your time, your inherent wildness for what? A title, a promotion. And all the while, the superego is there, whispering its soothing mantra, sacrifice now, work hard now, the reward will come later. It ensures our constant, willing obedience to the system.
It sounds like a self-consuming loop. And then I suppose we see the ultimate release valve for Thanatos in things like war.
Exactly, where suddenly the same superego that might shame you for a small personal failing now gives you its absolute blessing to kill, as long as the violence is framed correctly.
Framed as duty or for your country, or defending our values.
That's the logic of sanctioned violence. The ultimate externalization of the death drive onto an other. But bringing it back to the personal level, if you're not literally fighting a war out there, often you're fighting one inside. You wage war on your own body, maybe through extreme diets or exercise. You attack your own mind for not being productive enough. You systematically trade away your own wildness for the feeling of safety for belonging.
Okay, this feels heavy.
Right.
It leads us right into the final, maybe most critical question. This prison without walls. If this whole system is so deeply ingrained, so pervasive, is real freedom even possible? We think we want freedom, but maybe we're confusing it with something else entirely.
Well, the Freudian perspective would argue, perhaps quite cynically, that you don't actually want real freedom. Not the messy, unmanaged, raw, unpredictable kind.
What do we want then?
You want the idea of freedom. Maybe freedom that's been sanitized, made safe by morality, pre-approved by your superego.
Look, the Trich victory of civilization, the real genius of it, is when the repression becomes completely internalized, invisible. So we obey, not because we feel the chain, but because we genuinely believe we are choosing the path.
Precisely. We think it's our own choice. That's the masterpiece. And maybe, also, the horror of it. We no longer feel the bars, we just comply. And we give that compliance noble names like conscience or integrity or personal responsibility.
That is.
Yeah.
That's chilling. Which makes me wonder about all the modern focus on self-improvement. You know, therapy, meditation, mindfulness, shadow work, optimizing our habits. Are these actually tools for liberation? Or are they something else?
That's the provocative question, isn't it? Are they tools to break free, or are they just better techniques for decorating the cage, making the internal prison more comfortable, more aesthetically pleasing?
But wait, surely things like self-awareness, understanding your trauma, surely those are beneficial. Are you implying my therapist might just be like an unwitting accomplice to my superego, helping me adjust to the cage?
I think too often, yes, that's the danger. We use these powerful tools not to dismantle the prison, but to optimize our functioning within it. It becomes a kind of Stockholm syndrome of the soul.
Stockholm syndrome of the soul, wow.
We start defending our captor, the superego, by renaming its mechanisms of control. We call deep-seated shame healthy self-awareness. We call the successful internalization of repression setting good boundaries. We're essentially trying to civilize the parts of us that were never meant to be fully civilized. We're trying to manage the fundamentally unmanageable.
So if the promise of happiness, or, achieving perfect integration, if that's maybe a cultural lie designed to keep us playing the game, keep us compliant, what's the alternative? What does this Freudian view offer instead?
It's not happiness. The offer isn't bliss. It's lucid suffering.
Lucid suffering.
Yes. The goal isn't necessarily integration or wholeness, because maybe that's impossible or even undesirable. The goal is recognition, radical clarity. It means truly seeing the fracture within yourself, understanding why you ache, understanding who or what installed the bars in the first place. You see, happiness is often the reward promised for obedience. Truth, clarity. That's the reward, maybe the only reward, for facing the internal reality, the internal trauma. And that clarity, that seeing, it's fundamentally more dangerous to the system than just blind rage. Because once you truly see the architecture of your own prison, you can't unsee it.
Which brings us to maybe the most uncomfortable thought of all, the final paradox. What if? What if deep down some part of us actually likes the prison?
Hmm.
What if that familiar structure of guilt and shame and obligation, what if it feels, paradoxically, safer than the absolute terrifying chaos of unmanaged, unpredictable desire and impulse?
It's a profound possibility. Maybe we didn't choose repression purely because we were forced or tricked. Maybe we chose it on some deep instinctual level because we were wise enough, or perhaps just scared enough, to choose survival and belonging over a terrifying, potentially isolating authenticity. The cage, for all its restrictions, keeps us predictable. It keeps us moral, functional within the group. Maybe we cling to the jailer because without that structure, we genuinely fear we might just dissolve entirely.
So, stepping back and trying to pull this together, the key insight we're exploring here is really about awareness, isn't it? Seeing the superego as a kind of colonization of the self. Seeing morality not just as virtue, but as a form of domestication. Seeing guilt as the internal wiring that keeps the system running, that God isn't up there or out there.
He's a mechanism operating inside you right now.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a really challenging question, I think.
The ultimate question, perhaps, which is, what are you actually willing to lose?
Yeah.
Your reputation, your income, your comfortable sense of belonging, your carefully constructed sense of self. What would you give up to be truly, genuinely unmanaged? Because make no mistake, there is a cost to stepping outside that cage.
And maybe here's the final twist, the really provocative punchline to leave you with. You are not just the prisoner in this scenario.
Mhm.
You're also the jailer. The only thing truly keeping that door locked is your own belief that you belong inside.
So the final thought is this. What might rise up in you if you simply stopped listening, stopped obeying the voice of that God in your head, the one that whispers endlessly, you're not enough? Or maybe just as often, you're too much.
Let that question just sit with you. Let it vibrate. Let it unsettle you. Until next time.